first of Door County started, people were staying in homes. And then when people saw there was a market, then they started building resorts.
Liberty Park was the first, quote, resort in Sister Bay. It was built by a man named Abraham A. Carlson, and he opened in 1898. And what he would do to try to get people over there, guests, is go down and meet the Goodrich boats, which were bringing people out from Chicago and Milwaukee, and they'd come up the Great Lakes and then hit all the little towns on the Door Peninsula. But he'd meet the boats down there and try to talk to people literally off the boat and say, you know, I have a real nice place to stay and my wife is a good cook, and so I think you'd really enjoy it. And that way he would get people to come and stay in his place. There was no electricity up here. There was no running water, so there were no bathrooms. And yet people were so anxious to get away from the heat and the filth in the city. So even though in Chicago they already had all these conveniences, running water and indoor plumbing, they would come up here without any of that stuff.
When they started in 1921, we made our own power, and I still have the generator. And it was powered with a huge, what we call a hit and miss engine. When it ran, we had lights, and when it didn't run, we didn't have lights. So we'd, in the nighttime, we'd start it up as it got dark, and then my dad would go up around 11 o'clock and flick the switch 2 times, and that meant hurry, get in your pajamas, because in a half an hour there would be no lights.
Well, if you go back to when the resort started, first of all, there was no transportation, right? People were coming up on the boat, and it's not like they had cars to run around with up there. The roads, what they were pretty bad. And so once you got to a resort, I say you're kind of a captive of it. You know, where do you go? So they had to have dining facilities, they had to have recreation, boats, docks, fishing, tennis, shuffleboard used to be real popular with the people.
A lot of the people came from Chicago, and there weren't all the restaurants that we have today, so they were serving them 3 meals a day. And they actually rang the bell, and that was time to eat. Everybody came running in at 8 in the morning and at 1 in the afternoon and 6 at night.
They were what were called American plan resorts. So you paid a cost a day that included not only your lodging but the 3 meals. So it was all inclusive like that. Back then there weren't any restaurants to go to anyway.
Then our dining room tables sat 8 people. We'd put 4 couples at a table. They loved it. They developed friendships that they'd come back every year, make sure that the people they sat with would be there the same week.
The same people came every year at the same time. And so these cliques started forming. You know, there was a July club, that all the people who came in July. They stayed in the same place, the same cottage or the same room, and they had the same table in the dining room year after year after year, and that's just the way it was.
We got one woman, I think she's been here 70 years, but she stayed here, so she's been here. I've been here 47th season, and this woman's here right now. I just talked with her this morning. She's back here. I think it's her 76th year staying here. It's like a reuniting. This whole group comes this week every year, and they sit down at the dock together, they do stuff together, they do all these other things, and it really is like a family reunion every week here.
The American plan was so prevalent that all the resorts had it. If you didn't take the American plan, you didn't stay there. That was mandatory. You try that today, and in about 2 days you'd be out of business. They won't do it. You know, people used to say, you know, we're up in Ellison Bay, we got to drive back 90 miles an hour to get there for lunch. Then we go back up again, and we got to drive 90 miles an hour to get back for dinner. They wanted more freedom.
You know, all these resorts went through a metamorphosis. They started out, they were American plan. That carried over into the 1960s. As people became more mobile and had cars and could get around, and then a few restaurants started popping up here, the hotels started gravitating away from the American plan. Gradually then, the places did away with any kind of a plan that included meals.